I still remember the look on David Miller's face, Eleanor's lawyer, as he confidently slid those divorce papers across the table. His smug smile was practically shouting, "Gotcha." What he didn't know. I'd already swapped them out for my own, and his gotcha was about to become his worst nightmare. But let's rewind, because the true story began 2 months earlier, in the deceptive quiet of our perfectly manicured suburban home. The air, thick with unspoken lies, had been hiding a secret that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my 8-year marriage. I genuinely believed we had it all. 8 years of marriage, a beautiful suburban home, and a business I'd poured my soul into, finally seeing real success. Eleanor was, or so I thought, everything I'd ever wanted. Brilliant, driven, absolutely stunning. We met at a corporate mixer, married 2 years later, and I truly felt we were unbreakable. But for the last 6 months, a subtle chill had been creeping into our perfect picture. She started wearing expensive perfume I'd never bought her, that rich, unmistakable scent of Tom Ford Black Orchid. She'd come home past 11 on weeknights, always with a convenient story about a late book club. Her phone, once openly left on the counter, was suddenly password protected. I told myself I wasn't the jealous type. I trusted her implicitly. What an absolute fool I was. The biggest red flag I dismissed was her sudden, intense interest in my company. For 8 years, Eleanor hadn't once asked about revenue, contracts, or client lists. Then, one Tuesday in March, she was sitting at the kitchen table, quizzing me on our entire company structure. She wanted to know about bank accounts, assets, property deeds, shared accounts, the business valuation. She said she just wanted to understand my world better, to be more involved. She even suggested we update some paperwork to make things more official. I thought it was sweet. God, I was such an idiot. And then there was the journal. A fancy leather-bound notebook she carried everywhere, scribbling in it at breakfast, before bed, sometimes even mid-conversation. When I asked, she'd say it was for therapy, processing feelings, a recommendation from her therapist. That was red flag number 97, and I still managed to completely miss it. Then came the day that obliterated my entire reality. It was a Saturday morning in early April. I was scrambling for my gym bag and figured I'd just borrow hers. As I unzipped the side pocket, my fingers brushed against something hard. A phone. Not her iPhone. A cheap, burner Android, tucked neatly under a towel. My stomach plummeted. You don't hide a second phone unless you're hiding something absolutely nuclear. I turned it on. No password. The text messages immediately flooded the screen. I sank onto our bedroom floor, numb and read. 3 months. 3 months of conversations between my wife, Eleanor, and her divorce attorney, David Miller. The messages started professionally, legal questions, asset consultations. Then they devolved. They got personal. Then, sickeningly, they got sexual. Explicit descriptions of hotel rooms, of what they'd done there. But even that wasn't the worst. The worst was the plan. Laid out in horrifying, meticulous detail. Eleanor was building a case against me. Fake abuse allegations. Emotional manipulation. Financial control. She'd been meticulously documenting false incidents in that journal for months, constructing a twisted narrative where I was the controlling, aggressive, financially abusive husband. None of it was true. Not a single damn word. Yet she was manufacturing evidence with dates and details. David was coaching her, what to say, how to act, which witnesses to prep. Her sister, Jessica, would testify about my anger issues. Her best friend, Eleanor, would claim Jessica seemed scared. Her coworker would allege Eleanor came to work with bruises. All lies. All perfectly coordinated. They were planning to take everything. The house, the business, my retirement accounts. All of it. She'd get primary assets, and I'd pay her $4,000 a month in support. David laid it all out like he was diagramming a football play. And then, woven between their legal strategies, were messages about meeting at the Marriott downtown, about room 412, about how stupid I was, how easy this was going to be. I read every single message. It took almost 3 agonizing hours. By the end, my hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. I felt physically ill. This woman, the one I had loved unconditionally for 8 years, had spent months plotting my absolute destruction, all while sleeping beside me every single night. I wanted to storm downstairs, to confront her, to unleash every ounce of my rage. But something stopped me. A primal survival instinct, perhaps. I suddenly understood. She'd been planning this for ages. She had a strategy. She had a lawyer. She had witnesses lined up. If I reacted emotionally, impulsively, I would lose everything. So, I took screenshots. Every text, every photo, every vile detail of their plan. I uploaded everything to a secure cloud account Eleanor knew nothing about. Then, I put the burner phone back exactly where I found it. That night, Eleanor came home and kissed me like nothing was wrong. She made dinner, laughed at the TV, curled up next to me on the couch. Every fiber of my being wanted to scream, to shatter the charade. But I smiled. I kissed her goodnight. And I went to bed. Because if she could act, so could I. Monday morning, I made a call. I called Sarah Jenkins. She's the lawyer you hire when losing isn't an option. The lawyer other lawyers whisper about with a mixture of fear and respect. I met her that same afternoon, armed with printed copies of every single screenshot. Sarah spent a full hour silent, just reading. Her expression was unreadable. Finally, she lifted her gaze. Her eyes, cold and sharp, met mine. She said just one sentence, "We can flip this entire thing on them." Her plan? Pure genius. We would draft our own set of divorce papers. They'd be almost identical to David's, same format, same legalese. Only a side-by-side comparison would reveal the differences. But the terms? Completely reversed. I'd get the house. I'd get the business. I'd get everything. Eleanor would pay me support. And here's where it got truly brilliant. Buried deep within the document would be a full, written confession. A paragraph where Eleanor admitted to fabricating evidence, falsifying documents, committing fraud, and having an affair with her attorney. All cloaked in dense legal terminology that, to the untrained or arrogant eye, would simply look like standard divorce jargon. Sarah explained that if we could get them to sign without reading it word for word, we'd have everything signed, dated, legally binding. But it depended entirely on my performance. For 2 grueling months, I had to play the part of the broken, defeated husband they expected. And that's exactly what I did. I stopped arguing. I stopped asking questions. I started sleeping on the couch. I let the dishes pile up. I wore the same clothes for days. My beard grew out unshaven, a symbol of my manufactured despair. And Eleanor? She flourished. She started smiling more, humming while making coffee. Her phone was constantly in her hand, texting openly, no longer bothering to hide it. She'd leave browser tabs open on her laptop, showcasing apartments she was browsing, making calls to interior designers. She truly believed she had already won. And watching her celebrate her impending victory, even before it happened, made the coming reversal so much sweeter. Last week, David's office called. The meeting was set. I walked into that sterile conference room yesterday morning. Eleanor looked triumphant, almost glowing. David looked utterly smug. They had no idea the trap they were walking into. The room was typical corporate, long table, stiff chairs, windows overlooking a bland parking lot. David sat at the head, radiating ownership. Eleanor was beside him, in a sleek black dress I'd never seen before, probably a celebratory purchase on our joint credit card. Sarah Jenkins sat next to me, her briefcase perfectly placed, looking completely bored, as if this was just another Tuesday. David started with a practiced, gentle tone, feigning sympathy. "Difficult for everyone involved," he murmured. "Hoping we can keep things civil." I nodded, playing my part, staring at my hands, the picture of defeat. Eleanor wouldn't meet my gaze, but kept shooting little, secret smiles and knowing glances at David. It made my skin crawl, knowing what those looks meant, what they'd been doing while plotting to ruin me. David slid a thick stack of papers across the table, 40 pages, meticulously organized with colored tabs, yellow for initial, pink for signature, blue for date. So professional. He began walking me through it, condescendingly, as if I were a child. Eleanor would keep the house, naturally, having contributed to mortgage payments. The business would be split 60/40ths in her favor for her emotional support during the building years. Emotional support. I almost laughed out loud. He droned on about retirement accounts, investment portfolios, both cars, joint savings, everything structured to leave me with barely 30%. And then, the cherry on top, monthly support payments of $4,000 for 3 years to help Eleanor maintain her lifestyle while she figured things out. $144,000 total on top of everything else I was losing. I just watched him. This man, who had slept with my wife countless times, was now confidently outlining my financial ruin. When he finished, he pushed an expensive pen across the table. Sarah didn't move. She let the silence stretch, thicken, become acutely uncomfortable. David shifted in his seat, his smugness beginning to fray. Then Sarah spoke, her voice calm, neutral, cutting through the tension like a surgeon's scalpel. She said we'd be happy to proceed, but first, she had one small request. Would David mind reading the complete terms aloud, for the record, just to ensure everyone fully understood? David's smile flickered. Confusion clouded his face. He glanced at Eleanor, who shrugged, clearly thinking it was a mere formality. They'd want, right? Why not humor us? David picked up the papers and began to read. And I watched his face change in real time. The color drained away. His eyes widened. His hands started to shake. The papers rattled because these weren't his papers. These were ours. The first section, primary residence located at, address, shall be retained in full by the husband with no claims from the wife. Eleanor's head snapped up as if she'd been physically slapped. She stared at David, then at the papers, then at me. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. David's voice, now barely a whisper, continued. Business assets, including Davidson Consulting LLC and all associated accounts, shall remain sole property of the husband. Vehicle ownership, including the 2022 Audi Q7 and 2021 Tesla Model S, shall transfer completely to the husband. Eleanor snatched the papers from his trembling hands, flipping through them frantically. Her fingers shook. Her face, a picture of pure shock, morphed into outright panic. This is wrong. This isn't right. What the hell is happening? She shrieked. David was frozen, staring at the documents as if they were written in an alien language. Then Sarah spoke again, her composure unwavering. There's one more section David hasn't finished, she noted, page 17, the declaration statement. I suggest he review that part carefully. David's hands were visibly shaking now. He turned to page 17. I watched his eyes scan. I watched the exact moment he realized what he was looking at. He looked at me then, truly looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw it. He understood. He had lost. He began to read, his voice a barely audible whisper. I, Eleanor Davidson, do hereby acknowledge and confess that I have engaged in fraudulent activities, including fabrication of evidence, falsification of journal entries, perjury and sworn statements, conspiracy to commit fraud, and an extramarital affair with my legal representative, David Miller, and I accept full responsibility for these actions. The silence was deafening. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, a phone ringing faintly down the hall. Eleanor's mouth was still agape, no sound, just rapid, shallow breaths. David dropped the papers. His hands were trembling uncontrollably, sweat beading on his forehead. Sarah calmly pulled a folder from her briefcase. She laid out printed screenshots, text messages between Eleanor and David, their detailed plan, graphic sexual messages, hotel receipts, credit card statements. Everything organized with tabs and highlights. She explained these were copies. The originals had been filed with the State Bar Association 2 weeks ago. An ethics investigation had been opened. David's firm had been notified that very morning. And the district attorney's office? They received a full package yesterday. David stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. He started yelling, his voice cracking. This is entrapment. These documents are invalid. I never agreed to this. My firm will destroy you. Sarah didn't blink. She didn't raise her voice. She calmly pointed out that he had read the terms aloud of his own free will, that Eleanor had reviewed the documents, that both had ample opportunity to object, that no one had forced anything. Then she gestured to the small recording device on the table, noting it had captured everything, perfectly legal in our state, with one-party consent. Eleanor turned on David like a cornered snake. "This is your fault," she shrieked, her voice thick with fury. "You promised this would work. You said it was foolproof. You're the expert. I trusted you. You ruined everything." David screamed back, his own rage boiling over. "You wanted to fake abuse allegations. You initiated the affair. You came to me. This was your idea. I was just helping a client." They went at each other like rabid animals. All their carefully constructed partnership dissolved in 30 seconds. All the planning, all the secret smiles gone. Just two people, desperate, trying to save themselves by utterly destroying the other. Sarah let them fight. Let them scream. Let them confess to everything while the recorder silently captured every single word. Eventually, security guards arrived, two uniformed men asking if the police were needed. David was pacing, pulling at his hair, yanking at his tie. Eleanor was sobbing, mascara streaking down her face in black rivulets. She kept trying to reach for me across the table, pleading, "We can fix this. I made a mistake. I never meant for this to happen. I still love you. We can go to counseling." I didn't say a word. I just packed up my documents, followed Sarah out, and left them there to deal with the consequences of their choices. In the parking lot, Sarah turned to me. For a fleeting moment, her professional mask slipped. A faint, almost smile played on her lips. She warned me the next few months would be intense. Eleanor would undoubtedly try to cut deals with prosecutors. David's career, she confirmed, was over, and I should prepare for them to come after me with everything they had left. But then she added, with a glint in her eye, that I had won. Completely. "This," she said, "is one of the most satisfying cases I've handled in 20 years. We got into our separate cars. I sat there for a long minute, engine running, hands on the wheel. For 2 months, I had meticulously maintained the facade of a broken man, playing the victim, acting utterly defeated. Now it was over. I had watched two people utterly destroy themselves, watched their carefully crafted scheme implode in real time, watched them turn on each other the instant things went wrong. I drove to the one-bedroom apartment downtown I'd rented 3 weeks earlier on Sarah's recommendation. I walked inside, closed the door, and sank onto the couch. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the first time in 2 months, I truly smiled. Because they'd had me. They'd almost won. Until they didn't. The fallout began slowly, a ripple at first, then accelerated into a full-blown landslide. 2 weeks after that meeting, Sarah called. David's law firm had terminated him. His partnership dissolved. His name scrubbed clean from the letterhead. They'd issued a public statement all about maintaining integrity and zero tolerance for ethical violations. The legal community is small. Within days, everyone knew. The State Bar Association suspended his license immediately. Sarah explained that with our evidence, David was facing permanent disbarment. His entire career. Gone. 23 years of law school, of climbing the ranks, obliterated in one meeting. He would never practice law again. Eleanor's situation was even worse. As it turns out, fabricating evidence and planning perjury are actual crimes. Felonies. With jail time. The district attorney got involved 3 weeks later. Formal charges were filed 2 months after that. 3 counts of fraud in the first degree, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted perjury. Eleanor hired a criminal defense attorney, Michael Stone, with a $75,000 retainer. Her parents took out a second mortgage to pay for it. He tried reaching out to Sarah to negotiate, but here's the thing about consequences. Once they're in motion, you can't simply undo them. The prosecutor on her case was Emily Carter, a tough, no-nonsense woman Sarah knew well. Emily didn't take kindly to people who abused the legal system, and she was pushing hard. This wasn't just a messy divorce. This was calculated, Premeditated, meticulously documented over months of text messages. For months after charges were filed, Emily offered Eleanor a deal: plead guilty to reduce charges, accept probation, pay full restitution, and agree to a permanent criminal record. The alternative? A public trial. Every single text message read aloud. David likely testifying against her. Her parents and friends hearing every vile detail of her plan. Local news covering every sordid moment. She took the deal. Signed it on a Thursday morning. Sarah told me Eleanor looked like she'd aged 10 years. 3 years of probation with strict conditions. $75,000 in restitution to me, paid in installments. $3,500 in monthly support payments for 2 years. Community service. Mandatory counseling. And the final nail, a permanent criminal record. That record utterly annihilated her professionally. Eleanor worked in corporate HR, background checks were standard. She was fired 3 weeks after her guilty plea. Her company cited ethical violations and breach of trust. How can you work in human resources with a fraud conviction? She applied to 17 firms. Rejected by all of them. Nobody wants an HR manager with a criminal record for fraud and perjury. Her parents remortgaged their house to cover legal fees and help with the restitution. Her dad stopped speaking to her for months. Her mom cried through the plea hearing. Their retirement, effectively destroyed. Eleanor moved back in with them. 34 years old. No job. No husband. No apartment. No reputation. Living in her childhood bedroom. The social fallout was just as brutal. Our entire friend group fractured. Most sided with me once they saw the evidence. Some simply vanished, wanting no part of the drama. Nobody wanted to be associated with that kind of betrayal. Her best friend, Jessica, blocked her number. Posted on Facebook about how she couldn't associate with someone who'd fabricate abuse allegations, how it made real victims look bad, how Eleanor had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Her book club uninvited her. Her gym friends stopped responding. Even her sister barely spoke to her. Eleanor ended up at a call center, customer service for an insurance company. $9 an hour, 40 hours a week, getting yelled at by angry customers. It was all she could find with her record. My business, ironically, thrived after everything settled. Turns out, when you're not being sabotaged from within, things run a lot smoother. I landed 3 major contracts within 4 months, hired 2 new employees, started working with a business consultant. Revenue increased by 40%. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts. Too many nights spent wondering if she was texting David in the room next to me. I bought a modern apartment downtown, 15th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a breathtaking view of the city. Completely different energy. New furniture. New everything. Therapy helped more than I ever expected. Sarah had recommended Dr. Lena Hansen, a psychologist specializing in betrayal trauma. I didn't think I needed it at first. I thought I was handling everything fine. But 2 months later, I had a full-blown panic attack in a grocery store. Completely fell apart in the cereal aisle. Couldn't breathe. Thought I was having a heart attack. Dr. Hansen explained that adrenaline had carried me through the immediate crisis. Now that the danger was over, my brain was finally processing what had actually happened. The betrayal, the manipulation, the months of lies, the fact that someone I loved had tried to utterly destroy me while kissing me goodnight. We worked through it over 6 months of weekly sessions. We talked about trust, about recognizing red flags, about how to eventually date again without suspecting everyone. It took 8 months before I felt truly normal, before I could think about Eleanor without my chest tightening, before I could trust my own judgment again. About 14 months after everything collapsed, I ran into David. A complete accident. It was a Saturday morning at a coffee shop downtown. He was 3 people ahead of me in line. He didn't notice me at first. He'd lost a significant amount of weight, looked much older, and was wearing jeans and a wrinkled shirt instead of his usual tailored suits. His hair was longer, unkempt. He saw me when he turned around with his coffee. He went visibly pale. He tried to leave without making eye contact, but the line was, Packed. He couldn't get out without walking directly past me. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He said nothing. What could he say? I didn't speak either. I just watched him shuffle past, shoulders hunched, utterly defeated, utterly broken. Exactly what he'd planned for me. I ordered my coffee, sat by the window, and watched him walk to a beat-up Honda Civic, faded paint, a dent in the bumper. This was the same man who once drove a BMW 7 Series, who vacationed in Cabo twice a year, who bragged about his corner office and billable hours. Now he looked like someone barely holding on, probably doing freelance document review from home, contract work, anything to pay his bills. And I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just nothing. He was a stranger who tried to hurt me and failed. Sarah called last month with an update. Eleanor had filed a motion requesting a modification to her support payments. She was struggling to make the monthly $3,500. Her call center job barely covered her car payment. Still living with her parents. Still unable to find anything in her field. Her lawyer argued hardship, claiming she was genuinely trying to rebuild, that the payments were preventing her from moving forward. The judge denied the request. He stated she had agreed to the terms, that she had signed a binding agreement, and that the consequences of fraud don't get reduced simply because they become inconvenient. Perhaps, he suggested, she should have considered financial hardship before committing crimes. I could have agreed to lower payments. I could have shown mercy. But I didn't. Because mercy is for people who make mistakes. Eleanor didn't make a mistake. She made hundreds of conscious choices over 6 long months. Every text to David. Every fake journal entry. Every lie. Every hotel room. Every witness she tried to coach. Those were choices. Deliberate decisions. And choices have consequences. My life now is genuinely better than it was. Better than if I'd stayed blind to what she was doing. I run my business, which is thriving. I still see Dr. Hansen every other week. I hit the gym 4 times a week. I travel more, took an amazing trip to Colorado last month. I'm dating casually. Nothing serious yet. I'm not quite ready, but I'm getting there. Learning to trust again slowly. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how it all went down. Friends, my brother, even Dr. Hansen once asked if I wished I'd handled it differently, if maybe I'd been too harsh, if I could have just divorced her normally without destroying her life. And I tell them the absolute truth. They had me. They had everything planned. The timeline, the strategy, the witnesses, the false allegations. They were going to take my house, my business, my reputation, my entire future. They were going to bankrupt me. They were going to paint me as the villain in a story they completely fabricated. They were going to send me to court, defending myself against fake abuse allegations. They were going to win. Until they didn't. And honestly, I sleep just fine knowing that. So, what do you think about all of this? If you were in my shoes, would you have done anything differently? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life narratives.